So it's Friday, May 20th. My wife asked me when I came on today, was I going to rant about YouTube? And I told her no. I don't plan on ranting about YouTube. I don't think I need to, and I don't think I will. Because I know they're trying to fix whatever the issue is, but it's still frustrating. We'll get into that in particular. I told you guys about a week ago that I had done these draft grades for each conference. And even though it's not as relevant now as it would have been, say, a week and a half ago when I first came up with these rankings, I was still going to do them because I did the work. So you're going to get one of them today. AFC draft grades on deck. We'll go division by division in that conference and talk about where each team ranks within the conference and then where they rank overall in the conference. So we'll get to that and more. Your comments and your reactions to what I had to say and then some here on the 261st installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 261st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Last night, epic stream with two kings of the Commanders game in Rico from Street Scores and Ed Oliver from The Real Ed Oliver. It was a marathon. I don't know if they knew what they were getting themselves into. I kind of felt bad. I always feel bad when I have somebody come on the channel because usually it goes a lot longer than I intend for it to go. But, you know, I told you time flies when you're having fun. I always enjoy doing these. So it was roughly about 5 hours. And we had a great time. We talked all things Washington under the sun. And after my streams, I make it a habit of going and checking on it to make sure everything is okay. Because in the past, I've had streams that I've done where I'm thinking everything's fine. I've done nothing different than I've done for the last 100 videos. And so I'm assuming everything's fine. Then I turn around and I look and I've got a yellow $sign where it shows that the video is monetizing. If it's green, you're fine. It's monetizing normally. You have nothing to be concerned about. If it's yellow, that means YouTube has dinged your video for something very minuscule, but nonetheless, they feel like it may not be as acceptable for some of their sponsors. So we're going to limit your ad revenue. And again, it happens. I don't really gripe about that. You know, sometimes it's because of a thumbnail. Sometimes it's because of the title of your video, you know, whatever the case may be. I don't usually trip on that stuff. It is what it is. So I always like to know, though. I don't like to be blindsided by anything. So generally, after I'm done with a live stream, I like to go check up on my stream, make sure everything's good before I call it a night. And last night, again, this thing's over like 2 a.m, right? Again, it was a marathon. So you go to check on it, and lo and behold, we've got an issue. At first, it was yellow. The monetizing $sign was yellow. So I'm like, huh. Sometimes it does that, though. Sometimes the monetizing $sign is yellow when you first end the live stream, and then after it finishes processing the live stream, it turns green. So I was like, I'll come back and check it. I got other things I can do. I'll come back and check it in like 30 minutes. So then I go back in about 30 minutes, and now the $sign is green. So I'm like, okay. But I look over to my left, and I see that the video's private. How'd that happen? And it says locked. What? So now I'm curious because I'm like, I see the numbers for the video and it's still going up. So it means people are watching it. But I'm like, if it's private and it's locked, how are they accessing the video? Great question. I still don't know the answer to how people were accessing the video. but it didn't last for long because YouTube stepped in, and wherever you were watching the video, it cut it off. Okay, shut that shit straight off. And everybody was asking me, "Hey, what's going on with the video? I can't find the video." And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I, got on Google, because that's what you do when you don't know what the hell's going on with something. You just Google it and see if you can find some answers. So I did that for about 30 minutes, roughly. And then after that, I decided, okay, well, didn't really get any answers that really satisfied me. So I decided to go through YouTube and Google itself, and try to see if I could find some answers. So was able to talk to a Google rep, and he wasn't useless, but he wasn't useful. I think that's kind of the Google thing, is that they're so nondescript. They you can't really get a hold of anybody, and then when you do, they can, but they can't help you. So it's not like you're frustrated and you're mad because they didn't help at all, because they did. They just didn't help enough. So it kind of leaves you in limbo, and you're like, this sucks. He didn't tell me anything, but he didn't make me feel like he wasn't going to tell me something. Hey, I'll get back to you tomorrow with some answers. So I get an email from the guy that I spoke to the night before. And he's like, hey, and a lot of times with these companies, they outsource their work, right? So it's some, foreigner that you're talking to, or someone from some, other country. And he had no problems. It's not like it was a language barrier. I didn't speak to anybody, verbally. This was all typing, keyboard. So everything was fine. But he emails me today. The guy that I spoke to emails me today, and he says, hey, I'm going to fill you in on what I know. I'm going to get you up to speed on what's going on here. Right? And sure enough, the very next sentence, he says nothing. Like, yeah, let me fill you in on what's going on. We're searching for the answers. Okay. And he's like, we'll get back to you when we figure something out. I'm like, okay. All you can say is okay. Like, what are you going to do? You didn't tell me anything. Don't tell me you're going to fill me in on what's going on, get me up to speed, and then say, hey, we're working on it. You're working on what exactly? What are we talking about? What's going on? Our future video is going to be impacted. Give me something that I can work with. I need answers. To my knowledge, this video that I'm doing right now, I get off of this stream, they might make this video private for all I know. I have no clue what's going on. I just know by the end of the weekend, I need this to be rectified. Anyway, the video that a lot of you are looking for, the Commanders Kings video, it's private. I have no control over it. I'm not the only one being affected. This is something that is randomly happening to vid makers and content creators across the platform. Not everybody's affected, but I've been one of the content creators that has been affected. I've seen people do videos talking about, their content and having the exact same message that I got. So I know it's not just me, which is comforting, to know that it's not just me, but it's also frustrating because I need answers. I need a resolution. That said, we're just going to see what happens. As soon as I know something, you'll know something. As soon as that video is able to be made public, it will be public. I'm assuming it'll be within the next 24 to 48 hours. That's my guess. And hopefully it'll be over the weekend so you guys can consume it over the weekend. But again, I'm in a holding pattern right now. I have no idea when this is going to be rectified. So really frustrating, to say the least. You put in that kind of work, 5 hours worth of content, and it's just not available. That's frustrating. And a lot of you woke up today feeling like, yeah, I'm going to watch that on the playback and check out what these guys had to say. And it wasn't there. And you want to know what is going on. So that's essentially what's going on. Is that I think YouTube has some kind of glitch or bug, or it could be even worse. They were hacked. We don't know what the situation is. They're very tight-lipped and they're not telling us anything. They don't want people to panic. They don't want mass hysteria. But you know what makes people paranoid and getting antsy and nervous is when you don't tell us anything, when you're not transparent. As long as I know what's going on, I'll feel a lot better about the situation. But when you're, pretty much being vague and kind of trying to figure this thing out without telling us anything, it makes people a little bit more anxious. So we'll see how that situation goes. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get to something that I've been meaning to get to for the last, couple of weeks. We're now into May. What is this? The 20th, right? Yeah. So we're almost at the end of May. We're closer to the back end of May than we are the first half of the month. And the draft was at the end of April. So this has been 3 weeks essentially in the making. But at the end of the day, I told you guys, much like my text messages, once I craft it, had I not actually written down this information, I just would have said to hell with it. I just won't do it. I'd already written this stuff down. I'd already planned to do this. So because of that, I'm going to do it. So without any further ado, let's jump into the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, AFC draft rankings. I went through and took the liberty to rank each and every single team's draft class in order of the way I think it falls within their division. Now, the frustrating part about the draft and these teams is a lot of the guys on the back end. I'm not going to be honest with you. A lot of the guys on the back end of this thing, I didn't get to watch. So, and generally speaking, your draft grade comes from what you do in the first 4, maybe 5 rounds. The 6th and the 7th round, there may be some great value, but again, I talk about how these draft grades and how grades in general are like, weighted differently, sort of like when you were in school and 60% of your grade was quizzes, or it was, in a final exam, your exams, you might have had one first half of the, semester and then one at the very end of the semester. So your exams count for, 60% of your grade. Quizzes and tests count for 30, and then homework, classwork, and participation count for 10% together, right? That's kind of how I look at the draft. There's day 1, there's day 2. Day 1 weighs more than day 2. Day 2 weighs more than day 3, and then we can get into the particulars of day 3, like 5th round, 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round. Some of these guys on the back end have no clue what their potential is, but I know most of the players that were drafted, so I have working knowledge of what's going on. That said, I'm going to give you my rankings for each of these divisions. So without any further ado, let's get to my draft rankings, and we will start with the division that had the team representing the AFC in the Super Bowl, the AFC North. So my number 4 team in that division in terms of the draft is the Cleveland Browns. So really, for me, one of the biggest things I needed Cleveland to do in this draft was I needed them to get a running mate for Myles Garrett. They had Jadeveon Clowney, and he came on strong towards the end of the season, but Jadeveon Clowney is not a guy to be counted on. That was a 1-year deal. I don't know if they're going to bring him back. Jadeveon Clowney is a guy that you don't sign until like August. Like, when's he been signed the last 3 years? Like July, August, somewhere in there. Like, he's a hired gun at this point. A series of 1-year deals. That's kind of how he's playing. No one wants to commit to him because he's always injured. You never know what you're going to get from him. So while he was cool when he was healthy playing alongside Myles Garrett, Garrett really hasn't had a real running mate probably since the trade with the Giants that netted them. What's that edge rusher that was in Miami? Ended up in New York with the Giants for a couple of years, and then was in that Odell Beckham Jr. trade. Or was it the trade for the? Yeah, it was the Odell Beckham Jr. trade. I can't think of his name, man. I can see his dang on face, but I can't think of his name. Anyway, and he was always hurt. So Olivier Vernon, thank you, King Musa and Bob Esther. Olivier Vernon, that was who I was thinking of. That's the last time he's had a real running mate with him on that defensive line consistently. And again, that's when Olivier Vernon was healthy. He had a string of injuries towards the end of his Cleveland Browns career. So for me, they needed to do something on the defensive line. They didn't have a first-round pick. They didn't have a second-round pick. So they were in a tough spot because they had a second-round pick, but they traded it. If I'm not mistaken, they traded that second-round pick. So they ended up with their first pick being in the third round. They took a corner, Martin Emerson. Then they took defensive end Alex Wright out of UAB. That's an interesting pick there. He's a developmental guy that not like a project, but he's a guy that I don't know if he's ready to come in and have an instant impact right away. David Bell at the receiver position, that was another position. So for me, number one was a running mate on the defensive line. Larry Ogunjobi was there a couple of years ago, really good for them, left in free agency, really had a great year for Cincinnati. They didn't replace him. So I thought they needed a guy like that. Whereas at receiver, getting Amari Cooper really lessened the need for a receiver right away, but you still needed to add to that group. You know, you lose Odell Beckham Jr., you lose Jarvis Landry. You need to replenish that position. So David Bell is a solid receiver, not a separator, not fast at all. But he's got strong hands. He's physical. He looks like every other receiver that they have in Cleveland. So I don't love this pick, right? The best pick I thought for their entire draft was Perion Winfrey, the defensive tackle out of Oklahoma that they got in the fourth round. Thought that was good value, right where I thought he could be. I actually thought he could have been gone in the third round, but to get him in the fourth round, fairly early in the fourth round, I may add, I thought was quality value, and also one of the more dynamic, explosive defensive tackles in this draft. So I like that pick, coupling him with Myles Garrett. Now, they broke a rule. I had to ding them. I always tell teams, look, man, I don't really give a shit what you do with your specialists. Long snapper, punter, place kicker. I don't care when you take them. Just don't take one before the fifth round. That's the only rule that I have, okay? Everything else is on the table. You can do whatever you like. You can do whatever you like. Yeah, just don't take a damn kicker or long snapper before the fifth round. Well, they took Cade York, kicker from LSU, in the fourth round. That's a no-no. Got to slap you on the wrist. That's a no-no. What are you doing? I get it. You need a kicker. And you saw what the kicker did in Cincinnati and how he changed the game for them. And so you wanted your own version of that. Hey, guy, don't pick a kicker before the fifth round, okay? Don't do that. So I had to dock him there. I love the pick of Jerome Ford, but how many goddamn running backs do you need in Cleveland anyway? I mean, seriously, now, you could say to yourself, well, both of those boys got hurt last year at one point. And, you know, that hurt their run game. Fine. But how many running backs do you need? I love Jerome Ford, though. So thought that was a solid pickup there as well. So overall, it's a meh draft for me in Cleveland. But really, the bulk of their offseason was built on getting Deshaun Watson and trading for Amari Cooper. So you just wanted to add to that. And I think they did that to a degree. But I don't love everything that was done in this draft. That's why they come in at number 4. And it's tough to overcome not having a first or a second round pick. Coming in at number 3 in that division is the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a team that I talk about every year as being one of the better drafting teams in all of football. That's why they always have a ton of talent. It doesn't always manifest itself into wins, as we've seen over the years. But you remember there was a stretch there with Marvin Lewis. They would go to the playoffs every year. They just wouldn't win any games in the playoffs, but they would go every single year. And why? Because they were talented every single year. So I talked about them and Buffalo in particular being two of the more well-balanced teams in the league that didn't really have any glaring holes. I think Cincinnati to a lesser degree, however. Buffalo, their roster is pretty well filled out, and they only needed a couple of things to add to the list, and they didn't have to have them. They just wanted them. There's a difference between wanting a player or wanting a position and needing a player or a position. The Bills don't need a lot of players and positions. They wanted to upgrade some positions. Same could be said for Cincinnati. However, they needed a couple of items, corner being one of them. They needed a corner. Okay, they needed to continue to fortify the offensive line. So these were things that they needed to do. They did that in the offseason with all of the moves that they made on the offensive line. So it's not like they haven't already done a lot of work to that offensive line, because they have. They got the tackle from Dallas. They got the guard from New England, guard/center combo from New England. They got the guard from Tampa Bay. So they did work on that offensive line, right? So it lessened what needed to be done in the draft. Still needed to have some work done, however. Daxton Hill in the first round, love the pick. And now that we come to find out that Jesse Bates III plans on holding out, and don't know if you guys saw that, but he's not planning to play under that franchise tag. He hasn't signed it yet, and he doesn't plan on signing it. He wants a long-term deal. And I told you that was going to get messy. Remember last year we talked about this. I said Jesse Bates III is pissed. He feels like he's being disrespected. He wants to be paid. The Bengals have pretty much not shown him any love. They never really communicated to him that we love you, we want you back. And he kind of was just dangling out there in his final year of his rookie contract, and he was pissed. And he pretty much voiced it, right? So I knew it was going to come to this if they didn't make things right. Clearly, they didn't make things right. That may have gone into the thought process because they reached out to his agent before the draft. They knew what he was feeling, okay? So they probably already knew what they needed to do, which is why they selected Daxton Hill at 31 overall. Because I thought corner was a bigger need than safety, but when you factor in that your best safety is talking about potentially not playing, then it becomes a really big issue. Cam Taylor-Britt in the second round, that's the position that I thought they were going to go in the first round, cornerback out of Nebraska. Really, really talented guy. Has some things that he has to clean up from a technical standpoint, but from a skill set standpoint, he's what you're looking for. He's tall, he's long, he can run. So I think that's a guy that they'll be able to get a lot out of if they can coach him up. Zachary Carter out of Florida, defensive end. I like it. I like it. And I think he's another guy, and they love going to that Florida well. If you've seen what Cincinnati's done over the years, especially at defensive end, they've usually gotten good success out of those guys. So we'll see out of the SEC in particular, Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, just to name a few. So we'll see if that trend continues for them here with Carter. Cordell Volson, to me, in the fourth round was a bit of a reach. Again, I'm not the reach guy, but I thought he'd go in the fifth, no earlier than the fifth. I thought he was more of a sixth round type of prospect, but they took him in the fourth round. Again, I got no problems with you doing whatever you feel like you need to do when you feel the need to do it. But this wasn't one of my favorite Cincinnati Bengals drafts. But again, they didn't need to do a lot. They really didn't. This is a really well-rounded roster already. Offensive line needed to be shored up. I thought they would have done something, though. I'm shocked that they didn't do anything at tight end, because you lost your number one tight end, and they've drafted tight ends over the last few years or whatever. But I just felt like they lost CJ Uzama to the Jets in free agency, that they would do something there, and they didn't. But it is what it is. Larry Ogunjobi not being back You know, he was so huge for them last year, 7.5 sacks. Him not being back, I thought, was something that would force them to maybe go and look for Perion Winfrey to replace him. Was kind of shocked they didn't do that either. So not really feeling this Bengals draft, but they did get some players that I think are going to impact their roster right away and help them at some positions potentially of need. Let's see. You get to the second team in this division draft wise, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers draft for me was really, really top heavy. Didn't really care for anything that they did at the back end of this draft. But the first 4 picks, I love them, all 4 of them. Kenny Pickett in the first round, to just sit and wait and not allow the pressures of the draft and outside noise impact your decision, to just sit and wait and hold your water, not panic, and just let Kenny Pickett fall to you. I thought they did a great job of just saying, you know what? If he's gone, he's gone. We're not going to panic. We got a backup plan, but we're going to just sit here and wait and see what happens. None of these quarterbacks are great, so one should fall to us. And the one that they wanted did. They got to pop the top on the quarterback position in this draft. They took the only quarterback that went in the first round. Hell, they took the only quarterback that went in the first 2 rounds, and Kenny Pickett out of Pitt. And he'll come in and compete to start right away. This thing is not a foregone conclusion that Mitchell Trubisky is going to start. Kenny Pickett's going to get an opportunity, and if he wows them in camp, he'll be their day 1 starter. So love that pick. George Pickens, a lot of people love this pick. George Pickens, 52nd overall in the second round. A lot of people feel like this guy has number 1 wide receiver written all over him if he can just stay healthy. And that was the problem with George Pickens at Georgia, is he couldn't stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, they may have something here, because I don't think they have a true number 1 wide receiver on their roster. I think they got a bunch of guys that can be number 2s and 3s. I thought Deontay Johnson had a chance to be a number 1. He's just too inconsistent for me. So at best, he's a 2. You probably would prefer him to be your 3rd option and have Chase Claypool step up and be your number 2. But Claypool seems to be a little bit inconsistent too. So I think I'd rather have Deontay Johnson as my number 2. Claypool is my number 3 gadget guy, can do a little bit of everything, take the top off the defense, also run a jet sweep with him, and throw a wide receiver screen to him. You can just do so many things with Chase Claypool. Now you get a George Pickens who looks like a traditional X. A lot of people compare him to AJ Green. The body types are similar. The body control is similar. The big playability is similar. He's just got to stay healthy. And if he does, this will be a great spot for him in Pittsburgh. DeMarvin Leal, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M, is another guy that I absolutely loved in this draft. I thought he could have gone earlier than he did. This is good value here in the 3rd round, and he's just going to help bolster and fortify a defensive line in Pittsburgh that always is looking for guys up front to be disruptive, and that's what DeMarvin Leal is. So like that pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then in the 4th round, Calvin Austin III, the wide receiver out of Memphis. He's a very intriguing player. Smallish guy, has that running back feel to him, plays the position a lot more physically than you would expect for a guy his stature. Kind of gives me, let me take out my notebook and give you who my comp for him is and where I had him ranked in this draft class. I had him ranked 11th, and he reminded me of Darnell Mooney, the emerging wide receiver in Chicago with the Bears. Smallish frame. You remember Darnell Mooney was a guy that didn't get drafted highly because of his size. Darnell Mooney's like 5'9", 5'10", 172 pounds or whatever. And people were turned off by that. But Darnell Mooney came in and kicked ass, and now, teams are taking notice of guys like that. And Calvin Austin III is one of these dynamic, explosive athletes that you just want to get on the football field, see what happens. And the Steelers already have a guy like that, but it doesn't hurt to add another one. So I like this pick for them. Then they got sentimental. They love adding brothers to the roster. They got like 16 Watt brothers. They got the other Edmund brother. That's their thing. So they go and get Connor Hayward. I don't love that pick. and I don't really love anything thereafter. So, but I like the first 4 picks a lot. So, I thought it was a really solid draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. Really, really solid draft for their GM. Kevin Colbert on his way out thought he did a tremendous job of leaving them with some stuff that may be able to transition them into the future. And then, of course, the number 1 team in that division is the Baltimore Ravens. You had a lot of people saying that the Ravens had the best draft overall. I tend to disagree with that, but they did have one hell of a draft. That is for sure. And they got a lot of players in this draft and a lot of guys that are going to help them moving forward. So let's comb through this thing real quickly. Kyle Hamilton in the first round, I think it's a steal at 14. You know, again, I think the lack of top end speed really got him. And I told him and his handlers, the worst thing you could have done was run if you knew he was going to run a 4.5. And they knew what he was going to run. He hadn't been timing and running 4.4s. And then he showed up at the combine and ran slow, because then he ran at his pro day and he ran a 4.5 again. So they knew what he was going to run. They should have said, oh, man, hey, Kyle, what we want you to do is we want you to go. We want you to jump, do your broad, do your vert. And after your vert or your broad, whichever comes last, I need you to say, hey, man, I felt something tweak. I'm not going to do anything on the field. Let it rest and hopefully be able to perform at my pro day. And that would have been good enough. They would have taken that excuse. And then if you wanted to get to your pro day and you just wanted to do some on-field work, you could have. Or you could have said, nah, I'm good, man. It still feels a little tight. I'm not going to risk it. And they would have took you at face value. They might have bitched and complained. They would have been fine, and you would have went in the top 7. Instead, you go 14th overall. That's a steal for the Ravens. Tyler Linderbaum was a guy that a lot of people loved in the first round. I'm not a big interior offensive lineman guy in the first round, but he's one of those exceptions to the rule. He just is really good at what he does. And he's one of those guys that can be your pivot man for the next 15 years. You know, one of those Jason Kelsey types. So they take him at 25 overall. Remember, they traded back into the first round with the Arizona Cardinals, who they traded Hollywood Brown to. We didn't know that at the time that DeAndre Hopkins was going to get suspended, but clearly Arizona did. They went out and got Hollywood Brown to pair up with Kyler Murray, reuniting those two college teammates. So they got another first-round pick. I thought they were coming back in the first round to get a receiver. You just traded Hollywood Brown. Probably need a receiver now. I also thought they needed a corner, so I thought they would go there. They fooled me. They went with a center. So in the second round, they take David Ojabo, edge rusher out of Michigan. You know, we all know the story about his situation and what happened to him at his pro day. He was on one of his last drills at his pro day. Knee buckles and gives way, ends up tearing his ACL or his Achilles. I can't remember which one. Goes down in a heap. There was a lot to do about nothing in terms of how it was handled. At the end of the day, I was more sick to my stomach for the kid than any of the things that were going on around him. This was a top 10 pick, potentially top 15 for sure. Now he's at 45 for the Ravens to select. Won't probably contribute at all in 2022, and they're aware of this. But if he turns out to be good, this is the position that they probably needed the most, edge rusher. They stunk at getting to the quarterback without blitzing. So if he's good, you pair him up with Odafe Owe, you could have something, man. A couple of big tenors getting after it. They could really have a chance to get some serious value here in David Ojabo. Travis Jones, I thought this was one of the most criminal falls of the draft. I wanted to know what the hell happened. Like, I thought he was on some Nakobe Dean type shit where he had an injury that we didn't know about. Because I'm like, is there a reason Travis Jones is still here? I had him mocked in the first round. You know, late first round, somebody's will come up and snatch this dude up because of what he could provide. And here we are in the third round, and the Ravens are like, well, if you're not going to do it, I will. I mean, this is one of the biggest steals of the entire draft. It's crazy. Daniel Falele, tackle out of Minnesota. I'm not the biggest fan of Daniel Falele, but he is a massive human being. The last time they drafted one of these massive human beings that I wasn't a fan of, he turned out to be a Pro Bowl caliber, all-pro type tackle that they ultimately had to trade because he wanted to play left tackle in Orlando Brown. So clearly they know how to get the most out of these guys that are oversized. So we'll see what happens. Daniel Falele is an interesting selection here out of Minnesota. Jalen Armour Davis, cornerback out of Alabama. I thought they were going to go corner earlier in the draft, as I saw it as a much bigger need, especially with all the injuries that they sustained last year and them just some of the guys getting older at the cornerback position in Baltimore. I thought they would have gone corner early, but they get Jalen Armour Davis out of Alabama. He'll come in and he'll compete, and he'll be solid for them. I like his game. I think there are some deficiencies in his game, but overall, I think it's a really good pick, especially where you got him and what he's going to be asked to do early in his career. I think there are some guys in front of him that are veterans that will be able to show him the ropes, help him develop, and then maybe get the best version of Jalen Armour Davis down the road. Charlie Kolar, look at how many picks they had in the 4th round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's why they really killed it in this draft, because ask any evaluator, any GM, they'll tell you that the real value in this draft came in rounds 2 through 5. Well, they had 6 picks in the 4th round. Charlie Kolar, love this pick. Tight end out of Iowa State. He's going to fit in like hand in glove in that offense. We know they love throwing the football to the tight ends, and he's a guy that is a pass-catching tight end. So that's going to be a great fit with him alongside Mark Andrews. So that's an excellent selection there. Jordan Stout, they broke a rule here. I don't give a shit how well you're killing the draft. You don't get to break rules, okay? You're no different than anybody else. You can't take a punter out of Penn State, Jordan Stout, in the 4th round. You just broke a rule. And if you're going to take a punter, why not take the punt god, Ariza from San Diego State? Like, why are we taking Jordan Stout? Now, maybe they didn't love Ariza, but clearly they loved Jordan Stout because they pulled the trigger on him in the 4th round. So I had to slap on the wrist. That's a no-no. We don't do that. We don't take specialists before the 5th round. So I did not like that. But they did do that because Sam Cook, a guy that had been there for like damn near 20 years, was retiring and they needed to replace him. I don't care. Don't take a punter. Don't take a place kicker. Don't take a long snapper before the 5th round. Isaiah Likely, tight end out of Coastal Carolina, another excellent pick to go along with Charlie Kolar. All of a sudden now, they're stacked at tight end once again. It reminds me of when they first got Mark Andrews. They still had Max Crosby, and they had Hayden Hurst, and I think they had the kid, the blocking tight end that they had. I can't remember his damn name. They were loaded at one time before they started offloading some of those tight ends and trading those guys away. Now they're loaded again. And, Lamar Jackson loves his tight ends. So they're going to have a field day with these tight ends now with Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, and, of course, Mark Andrews. And then Damarian Williams, cornerback out of Houston, another solid pick. I told you corner was a need for the Ravens, so they doubled down on that in the 4th round. Just really like what the Ravens did. Love what the Ravens did in this draft. They were clearly the number 1 team in this division. And if we're going overall for the conference, Cleveland was 4th in the division, 14th overall in the conference out of 16 teams. The Cincinnati Bengals were 3rd in the division, 13th overall in the conference. The Steelers were 2nd in this division, 6th overall in the conference in terms of what they did in the draft. And the Ravens were 1st in this division, 2nd overall in the conference for me. So now we head to what is routinely the most competitive division in all of football, but now it is without question the most competitive division in all of football, and that's the AFC West. And we start with the number 4 team in that division, and it's the Vegas Raiders. And you know why. I mean, they traded away a ton of assets to get better with veteran players that are going to help them win now. They weren't thinking about the future. Remember, when you get a new GM, your first course of action is to reshape the roster, get rid of guys that you think are dead weight that you did not acquire. That's what they're in the process of doing right now. You saw that they didn't pick up a bunch of 5th-year options with those players. We talked about that on the podcast last episode. They traded for Devontae Adams. They've signed Chandler Jones in the offseason. So they were extremely busy with the Raiders, and they didn't have a first or a second round pick because of all the moves made in the offseason. And they were fine with that. They felt really good about what they were able to acquire this offseason. But the guys that they got, I didn't love the picks. I will just tell you that I do like Dylan Parham, guard out of Memphis. I like that a lot. And Zamir White, to me, that's the writing on the wall that Josh Jacobs wasn't going to be back. And remember, they hadn't turned down the fifth-year option yet. That didn't come until the week thereafter the draft. So that Zamir White pick kind of sent off flashing red lights in my head like, wait a minute. Are you trying to tell me something? And they damn sure were, because they didn't pick up the fifth-year option on Josh Jacobs. They're going to replace him, and they're going to replace him with Zamir White. So those were the two interesting picks that I saw in their draft. Everything else was just like, depth purposes, guys that are rotational guys. Nothing that you get really excited about. But I love Dylan Parham, guard out of Memphis. And Zamir White, they call him Zeus. He is rocked up. He's physical. He can run. And he's going to be the replacement for Josh Jacobs in Vegas. So they were the fourth best draft in that division. And overall in the conference, they had the 15th best draft. So didn't think very highly of the Raiders draft, but that's understandably so. Now you get to the third team in that division, and it's the Los Angeles Chargers and their 2022 NFL draft. We knew they were going to go offensive line with that first pick. I thought they were going to go tackle. They went guard and Zion Johnson. I got no problems with taking a guard there if that's what you so desire. Again, I still think they've got an issue at the tackle position. We'll see if they have a guy that they've acquired via free agency or someone in-house that they really feel confident in. But they have to make sure that they protect Justin Herbert better than they did a season ago. So they went safety in the third round, JT Woods out of Baylor. I have no problems with that pick. Quality football player there that they're going to add to the mix, a guy that can run. And again, that's the calling card of this Chargers defense. It's just a bunch of dudes that can run, and JT Woods can run. So they add more speed to a defense that was already one of the fastest in all of football. Isaiah Spiller, love this pick for them. I think he goes right to the top of the food chain of running backs not named Austin Eckler on their roster. They got a bunch of dudes, man. None of them move the needle. They've tried in multiple drafts to draft a guy that can complement Austin Eckler, but they've always done it in, just like they did here in the fourth, fifth, sixth round. And they tried, I think, as early as maybe the second round with one of the guys. I don't love the kid out of UCLA. Don't love him. The kid out of I think it's Justin Jackson, something like that, out of Northwestern. Yeah, I liked him a lot coming out, but he's just so average. Or as I like to say, extraordinary. Not extraordinary, extraordinary. Isaiah Spiller goes straight to the top of the food chain of those backs, and he'll make a great compliment to Austin Eckler. So I really like that pick. The Double O from UCLA is an interesting pick. Thought he might have gone a little sooner, so I actually think this is some quality value right here. And, Jamari Salyer might be the guy that they think could replace, Storm at the right tackle position. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. That's all I'm going to say. Solid draft, but I don't know. I thought Storm Norton needed to be replaced. That was just my thing. Zion Johnson felt like a luxury that I don't know if they necessarily had, because I thought tackle was more important than guard at that point. Felt like you could get a guard, later on in the draft, but you needed to attack and address tackle. But clearly they felt the opposite. I can get a tackle later. Storm Norton isn't as bad as you think. Okay, fine. I watched week 18. I watched the season last year. I beg to differ, but Zion Johnson's going to come in and he's going to do work. So don't have any problems with that pick, but thought they needed tackle more so than guard. So Chargers come in at number 3 in this division and 12th overall in the conference. Checking in at number 2 for me is the Denver Broncos and their 2022 draft class. I actually really like this class. And the only reason that they're not number 1 is because the team clearly over them, I thought, had a better draft. However, this is a really quality draft here by the Denver Broncos. And this has, Minnesota Vikings vibes all over it, which their GM came from Minnesota a couple of years ago. So I'm not surprised that they ended up with like 87 picks. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Feels like more than 9, but they had no first round pick, the Denver Broncos. So they got to business in the second round with Nick Bonito, the edge rusher out of Oklahoma. I love this pick. Gives them another guy that can get off the edge. He's a smaller guy, so the questions about him in the run game are prevalent. But one thing's for sure, this dude's slippery. He's athletic. He's explosive. And I think he's the kind of guy that you need in this division with all these prolific passers. You need a guy like Nick Bonito to get to the quarterback. So I love this pick here in the second round. Greg Dulcich was my favorite tight end in this entire draft class. To get him in the third round, I feel like was an absolute steal. And, you lose Noah Fant because you traded him to Seattle to get Russell Wilson, which is why you don't have a first round pick. And you replace him with Greg Dulcich. Is Greg Dulcich Noah Fant? No. But can he be a solid replacement for him? Abso-freaking-lutely. So I love this pick to go along with Albert O. Man, I just love it. Damari Mathis is a really solid corner. He's a hit or miss corner to me, but I like him, and I think he'll fit well in Denver's scheme. So I thought that was a solid pick in the fourth round. And then you look at the safety, Delarian Turner-Yell out of Oklahoma. You look at the defensive tackle they took, Uzurike from Iowa State, and even Montrell Washington, a wide receiver from Samford in the fifth round. And I just see guys that not only will make the football team, but may be able to contribute in a number of different ways for the Denver Broncos. Montrell Washington is interesting because he's one of these jack of all trades guys. As I like to say, a Pam Mom type of player. He's not a master of anything, but he's proficient at many things. So he's a guy that they used at running back, wide receiver. So he did a little bit of everything. But I thought this was a really solid draft by the Denver Broncos, surrounding your quarterback with talent. Look, they were already loaded when Russell Wilson got there. And the one position tight end that you somewhat depleted when you traded for him, you replaced him with Greg Dulcich. So you replenish that position, upgrade the defense a bit, which is what they obviously were aiming to do with the first pick being an edge rusher, the third pick being a corner, and the fourth pick being a defensive tackle, and the fifth pick being a safety. I just think that they're in a position to compete right now. And this draft kind of speaks to that. So they were number 2 in this division and 8th overall in the conference were the Denver Broncos. And then, of course, the number 1 team in this division is the Kansas City Chiefs and their 2022 NFL draft. It was a who's who list of big names and guys that we thought were tremendous value in this draft. They got him. Trent McDuffie. So we knew that the Chiefs were a trade candidate. They had 2 first-round picks back-to-back at the back end of the first round, picks 30 and 29. So we knew that they were a potential trade destination for a team that was needy or looking to move back. So they were able to trade with the Buffalo Bills, or I think this is the New England Patriots, actually, that they traded with here. Traded up with New England and got cornerback Trent McDuffie. And I cried and I bitched, moaned, and complained about Kansas City's lack of resources spent at the cornerback position. I kept talking about how they just keep getting everybody's trash. Like, oh, you throwing out that former first-round pick? I'll take it. They're the guy that's driving around with an old pickup truck through your neighborhood, seeing if you got any scrap metal that you're throwing out that they're going to take to the junkyard and try to get a couple bucks for it. That's who they were at the cornerback position. Well, they're no longer that now by drafting Trent McDuffie, who I thought was one of the most skilled corners in this draft class. So I love that pick there. George Karlaftis was their pick at 30. Remember, they had 2 first rounders, traded one with New England. And so Karlaftis just fits what they like as an edge rusher. I don't love this pick. I don't love George Karlaftis. I'm not a George Karlaftis fan. So I didn't love this pick, but I knew they were going to take him. It just seemed too much like right. He's the perfect edge rusher for Steve Spagnuolo. These are the kinds of guys he likes. He fawns over these types of players that are this size. So that one made a ton of sense to me. Sky Moore, a lot of people love him. I liked Sky Moore. I think a lot of people were overrating Sky Moore, right? But you know what he's going to do? He's going to fit in perfectly in this offense. We all assumed, they're going to get a receiver in the first round. And then the receiver position exploded in, 4 guys going off the board and 5 picks from 8 to 12. And it really probably changed the way the Chiefs perceived the receiver position in the first round. And so I think they decided the value is no longer here at 29 or 30. We'll just wait until, the 40s and take care of this. It actually ended up being the 50s. So they get Sky Moore. He's going to fit in beautifully in Kansas City to go along with all the guys that they've already brought in, Valdez Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster to kind of offset the loss of Tyreek Hill. So they're going to be just fine now. Then you look at Brian Cook, the safety out of Cincinnati. I love this dude. Physical, fast, ball skills. It's a lot in this package. You're getting a big dude to like 6'1", 6'2", 215-ish. Physical, come down and hit anybody. And just as physical as he is, he can run. He's a 4'3" guy, and he's got ball skills. So they move on from Tyrann Mathieu. They go out, they sign Eric Reed, and now they add Brian Cook to the mix. They got a ton of safeties out there, and all of them can play. And I really like that move. Leo Chanel. A lot of people were a lot higher on Leo Chanel than I was. I like Leo Chanel. I don't love Leo Chanel, but you know what I do love? Leo Chanel in the 3rd round. I knew a lot of Washington fans that wanted him in the 2nd round. I was like, nope, I'm good. But Leo Chanel number 5, as a lot of people like to call him, in the 3rd round, I think that's pretty good value for a Kansas City Chiefs team looking to upgrade the linebacker position. So Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State University, a tremendous skill set that I think the Chiefs are excited to get their hands on. He's a guy that your only thing you worry about is, can he play at a high level against higher level competition? He showed that in the offseason in those extracurricular bowls and things of that nature. So I think they were comfortable in the player that they were getting here. And I thought that just that enhanced their draft. So it's crazy. We talked about receiver. And I said, I don't think they're going to be as aggressive, drafting 3 or 4 receivers, but I did think they were going to get one sooner than they did, but they ended up getting Sky Moore. So I feel good about that. I just thought this was a well-rounded, excellent draft. I mean, they got high-level players at just about every position that they decided to pluck a player from. And they went with diversity. They took a corner, then they took an edge rusher, then they took a receiver, then they took a safety, then they took a linebacker, then they doubled back and got another corner. And to me, they got some of the top players at their respective positions at every position that they drafted at. Like, I don't have to love George Karlaftis, but he's a good football player. I'm not the biggest Sky Moore fan. I like him a lot. But they got him at 54 when there were a lot of people thinking he might be gone in the 30s. So Brian Cook was like my number 4 safety in this draft. And I don't remember exactly where I had him, but he was like number 4 or 5. I thought they did a really good job overall. So the Chiefs come in at number 1 in the AFC West. And for me, number 3 overall in the conference. So now we go to the AFC East, where the Buffalo Bills reside. And will go with the Miami Dolphins as the worst draft. And of course, they only had 4 players that they selected. They essentially went all in the offseason, making moves, primarily Tyreek Hill. So they didn't have a lot of draft capital to begin with. You only had 4 players: Channing Tindall, linebacker out of Georgia that I absolutely love. Eric Zumum out of Texas Tech. Cameron Good, linebacker out of California in the 7th round, and Skylar Thompson, quarterback out of K-State, who's more of a Taysom Hill type of guy. So really, at the end of the day, they only had 1 pick that I really gave a rat's ass about, and that was Channing Tindall. So this is an incomplete draft. It's 4 players. I don't know what to do with that. And honestly, there's only one guy that I get excited about, and that's Channing Tindall. So when you've got 4 picks and 2 of them are 7th rounders, you didn't have a draft. So clearly they were the 4th best draft in their division, and they were the worst draft in the AFC conference overall, which Dolphins fans don't care because of what they did in the offseason. And we'll see if it pays off dividends for them or not. The New England Patriots were the 3rd best draft in the AFC East. And they started their draft out by trading back. We talked about that with Kansas City, moved back to 29, allowed the Chiefs to come up to 21. They were able to pick up some draft capital doing that. Cole Strange is who they ended up taking out of Tennessee Chattanooga. I thought it was a strange pick because I thought he was a 2nd round pick. I did not think he was a 1st round pick. But, I've never been fond of the New England Patriots drafting, period, ever. They do most of their damage in free agency. That's when they do good things, it's because they went out and got other people's players and coached them up to fit in their scheme. They're not great at identifying talent a lot of times. But a great example for that for me is Tyquan Thornton in the 2nd round. What are you doing? Why are you taking Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor in the 2nd round? Like, this screams Bethel Johnson. This screams Chad Jackson. This screams what the Patriots have been at the receiver position when they draft speedsters in the 2nd round that can't play, or speedsters late 1st round that can't play. They took N'Keal Harry. I thought he could play. I thought he's going to be like, the reason I'm so down on a guy like Drake London is because of N'Keal Harry. I have PTSD from N'Keal Harry. Guys that couldn't separate at college, at the collegiate level, and now I'm supposed to just believe that because they're big and, they can use their body, they're going to be fine at the NFL level. Bullshit. I've seen enough of these dudes, Laquan Treadwell and N'Keal Harry, to feel like, no, that's not how this works anymore. That guy's not Marquise Colston. He's not going to use his body and separate and catch everything that's thrown his direction. So the Patriots, they are horrible at drafting receivers, have been for a very long time. This goes all the way back to the Tom Brady days. And I think Tyquan Thornton is going to be another mistake. That's just how I feel. Don't love this pick, especially in the 2nd round. And but they wanted speed, clearly. Fastest guy at the combine. They clearly wanted a speed upgrade. They're going to get it. We'll see if he's able to provide them what they're looking for. I love this pick, though. This made up for the pick of Tyquan Thornton in the 2nd. This pick of Marcus Jones, this cornerback out of Houston, he went to the right team, first of all, because Bill Belichick is going to utilize this guy in so many different ways. This guy is the most elite kick and punt return man you've ever seen in your life coming out of the collegiate ranks. I think the dude had like 12 kickoff returns for touchdowns, like 12 punt kickoff return. I'm exaggerating. It was like 6 or 7, but it was a ridiculous number, right? He's fast as shit. He's quick as the day is long, and he can do a lot of things, but he's listed as a corner. But I think his best value may actually be as a gadget guy on offense. Just get it to him. You saw what he's capable of as a return man. I think they're going to identify that relatively quickly, and they're going to Troy Brown his ass. They're going to have him playing defense and offense and special teams, and they're going to get a lot out of Marcus Jones. I love this pick for the Patriots because they know what to do with guys like this. They may not know how to draft receivers, and get the most out of those guys, but they know what to do with guys that are multifaceted like Marcus Jones. So I like this pick for the Patriots. Sticking with the Joneses, Jack Jones, cornerback out of Arizona State. I felt some type of way about this pick initially, because here's a guy that initially went to USC, had some issues, went to a JUCO, came back, repackaged his career, went to Arizona State. Highly skilled, highly athletic and talented, but I think he's one of those dudes that believes in his skill a little bit too much, and his belief of his skills doesn't actually meet the level of his skills. Not the fastest guy, not the longest corner, super competitive, thinks his doo-doo don't stink, and you need dudes like that, especially at the cornerback position. You need dogs that they're not afraid to hunt, and even if they get in a fight and a tussle and they don't win, they're coming back for more, and that's Jack Jones. And remember, they don't have an alpha at corner anymore. I think they identified Jack Jones as a potential alpha because there's no more Stephon Gilmore. They traded him in season. All right. And there's no more of the corner that the Chargers got in the offseason in free agency. So they need a dog at corner. I don't know if Jack Jones is it, but he has the demeanor of a dog. That's for sure. And then Pierre Strong, running back out of South Dakota State. I just always look at the Patriots and say, how many running backs do you need, man? Like, they seem to collect running backs. Similar to the Cleveland Browns. I'm like, bro, do you really need another running back? Kind of feel the same way with New England. Do you really need another running back? You just drafted Ramondre Stevenson. You just traded Sony Michel, but you already had like 6 other dudes on the roster that you really like Damian Harris and all these guys. Like, do you really need another running back? They're like, you can never have too many, I guess. And Bailey Zappi, quarterback out of Western Kentucky, I thought was interesting here for the Patriots. Back in the day, the Patriots were great at drafting quarterbacks in these rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, developing him, shining him up, and pulling the wool over someone's eyes and fleecing them. Those days are gone. But I think what they view in Bailey Zappi is a guy, first of all, set all kinds of college football records, shattered a couple of Joe Burrow's records that he set in that historic 2019 season for most touchdowns, yards in the season, all of that good stuff. What they see is a pocket passer that, if given time, can shred defenses. And so they figured, look, we got a traditional pocket passer in Mac Jones. Why not back him up with another traditional pocket passer in Bailey Zappi? I have no problems with this pick. It was a solid draft by the Patriots. Don't love the Tyquan Thornton pick. I thought it was a little early for Cole Strange. I thought that pick was strange. But I love the Marcus Jones pick. I'm intrigued by Jack Jones and Bailey Zappi. So solid draft for the New England Patriots. Not that Cole Strange can't play. Just thought it was a little early for him, but that's fine. Again, I'm not the draft value police. That's not my thing. So solid draft for the New England Patriots. And then the number 1 team in that division, clearly, you already know, it's the Buffalo Bills. I talked about Cincinnati being one of the most well-rounded teams in football. The Bills, to me, are the most well-rounded team. They're the team with the least amount of holes. They're the team that needed the least amount of items. Again, there's a big difference between want and need. The Bills didn't need a lot of things in this draft. The really only thing that I thought they needed was corner. Everything else was a want, not a need. So getting Kaiir Elam in the first round, 23rd overall, that was a need. They addressed it right out of the gates. I thought they would address it. I actually thought Elam, there was a chance he could be gone by this pick, but he wasn't. And I had him in my mock draft going to Cincinnati, so I wasn't shocked that he was still available. But I thought he could have been gone if some teams that went in different directions decided to go corner. This is a great pick for the Bills, man. It's the most talented corner that they've been able to get their hands on since they got Tre'Davious White back in like 2018 in the draft. So you pair him up with Tre'Davious White, who's coming off of an injury. They lost Levi Wallace to the Steelers in free agency. So you replenish him with a more talented football player here in Kaiir Elam. You got to feel really good if you're Buffalo. That's a great pick. Then you get James Cook. So they wanted to get J.D. McKissick in free agency. J.D. McKissick has a change of heart, decides he wants to come back to Washington. So it leaves a void at that pass-catching running back position for the Bills. Again, they don't need this. They want this. So they just draft James Cook, the best pass-catching running back in the entire draft. Are you kidding me? Like, the rich just get richer. I absolutely loved Terrell Bernard out of Baylor. He's one of my favorite linebackers in this entire draft class. He's so versatile. He reminds me of a guy that's on this Bills roster as we speak in Matt Milano. Like, are you kidding me? Like, the Bills absolutely killed it with this pick in the third round. Perfect value, perfect player to fit their defense. Then they get Khalil Shakir, a guy that's going to come in and be their de facto Cole Beasley. Like, what? They got Jamison Crowder on a one-year deal. Crowder will school this kid up, and he'll watch him, learn from him, and then he'll take over that role in 2023. So, like, and then they get the punt guy. They get Matt Ariza, the kicker, and they didn't break any rules to get him. Biggest leg in the draft. One of the few kickers we've ever seen come out that can kick field goals and punt the football equally. So if they wanted to, they could say, you know what, we're good here. We got our punter and our place kicker, but no one ever wants to do that. You don't want your place kicker and punter being the same guy, even though you could free up a roster spot, because if he pulls a hamstring, now you don't have a punter or a place kicker. That's dangerous. So he's going to be their punter primarily, but guess what? If their field goal kicker goes down, he can step in and kick field goals. So love that pick as well. I just thought this was an excellent, even down to their final pick, getting Baylon Spector, the linebacker out of Clemson. He'll be a special teams guy. And in a pinch, he can come in and give you some solid snaps as a, backup linebacker. I just thought this was a really quality draft by the Buffalo Bills. They just know how to do it in Buffalo. I talk about Brandon Beane all the time, man. This dude just gets it, man. The rich get richer. The Bills. So the Patriots were third in this division and 10th overall in the AFC conference. The Bills were second in this division and fourth overall in the conference. And even though I love this draft, I love a draft more than theirs. You already know what it is. You already know. It's the New York Jets. If there was a single team that got better this offseason via free agency and a combination of that and the draft, it's the New York Jets. Now, I don't know how many wins this is going to manifest itself into for the Jets. And I think a lot of that revolves around the quarterback position and what they get out of Zach Wilson in year two, and how this coaching staff comes together and how guys buy into what they're doing in New York. But with the offseason that they turned in and this draft here, let's run through it real quick. I mean, it's hit after hit after hit after hit. Like, as a card collector, when you buy a hobby box, you expect, depending on how many cards you're getting and what's supposed to be inside, the guarantees that this, that, and the third, you expect, let's say you get a box, it's got 10 cards in it. They tell you that you're going to get 2 autographs, you're going to get 3 parallels, you're going to get 3 base, and then you're going to get another 2 cards that you just, could be, some bangers. You're probably expecting, 3, maybe 4 hits at, most out of that box. You don't expect 7 hits, though, out of 10, because that's not how they usually operate. So when you see a draft with this Jets team that's 3, 6, 7 picks, you don't expect out of these 7 picks to get 6 or 7 hits. But that's what I'm looking at here. So Sauce Gardner, 4th overall cornerback out of Cincinnati. I thought he was the second best corner in the draft. They got him as the second best corner in the draft. Okay. I love the pick. And for what their defensive coordinator / head coach, Robert Saleh, wants to do, you need corners that can play some ball. Now he's got one. Garrett Wilson. They were searching, probing all over the league, trying to acquire a veteran number 1 wide receiver. They called the Seattle Seahawks and inquired about DK Metcalf. They called the Kansas City Chiefs and inquired about Tyreek Hill. None of those things came to fruition. They stayed at 10 and selected Garrett Wilson. Well, guess what? You just got a number one wide receiver, and you didn't even have to trade for him. All right. Jermaine Johnson II is a guy that I love. I liken him to Harold Landry in terms of his readiness coming into the league as a pass rusher. He's still a little bit raw, not as polished as I felt like Harold Landry was coming out of BC some years ago, but I think he's on par with him athletically, and I think he is a guy that can end up being a havoc wreaker. Harold Landry, if you weren't paying attention, just got an extension, a big extension to stay in Tennessee as he's starting to blossom into what they thought he was going to be when they drafted him out of BC. I see Jermaine Johnson being along that same track, a guy that comes in, maybe doesn't wow you right out of the gates, but give him 2-3 years, he'll be tearing it up for this Jets football team. Love him as an edge rusher. And I had him as a guy that could easily go as high as 8 to Atlanta. They get him at 26. So 3 first-round picks for the Jets. They trade back into the first round to snag Jermaine Johnson II. I love that. I love the aggressiveness, okay? Get aggressive. Get good football players. Let's speed up this process. You've been bad for long enough if you're the Jets. Then in the second round, they take running back Breece Hall. So they took Michael Carter last year. They like what they got out of him. They're going to love what they're going to get out of Breece Hall. So immediately you say, we need to help Zach Wilson. How do we do that? We get him a wide receiver that's a number one. They did that. How else can we help him? You get him a number one running back that's going to take some of that load off of his shoulders. I couldn't think of a better pick for a team with a young quarterback than acquiring a guy like Breece Hall, who was the best running back in this draft class, if you ask me. Then you get Jeremy Ruckert. You guys know. You guys know how I felt about Jeremy Ruckert. Look, I'll just say this. He was one of my favorite players, not tight ends, players in this entire draft class. So for them to get him in the third round, tremendous value right around where I thought he should have gone. And I think he ascends to the number one spot. And they signed 2 tight ends in free agency. I think he's better than both of those guys, including CJ Uzomah, who they signed. And they signed the guy from Minnesota who's actually a better athlete than people give him credit for. Ruckert is better than both of those dudes. And as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a problem. Then they get Max Mitchell, the tackle out of Louisiana. I love this pick. He's going to come in and compete and give them some versatility along that offensive line. And then Michael Clemens out of Texas A&M. I think this is a solid pickup here. Another guy you throw in the mix. They don't have enough edge rushers. You can never have enough edge rushers. You throw another one in the mix and Michael Clemens. I love this draft top to bottom. It's my number one overall draft in this division, and it's my number one overall draft in the conference. So we finish up the AFC with the AFC South. And my number 4 team in that division is the Tennessee Titans. Didn't love their draft. Clearly, they're number 4 in this. But I'm going to say this. This draft, I think, had the tightest split of any other draft class, division, I should say. Meaning the separation from the first team and the 4th team was as small of a gap as you got in any of these divisions in this conference. I thought that they were as close to the number 1 team in this division as any other number 4 team was to the number 1 team in their division. So there wasn't a lot of separation between the 4 teams in this draft, this division rather, in terms of the quality of their draft. But of the 4 teams, I like this one the least. So Treylon Burks in the first round. I got no problems with it. After you trade A.J. Brown, you got to do something, right? So this was their replacement. I know you guys heard about Treylon Burks' first day at the mini camp, the rookie mini. I liken it to Eagles hiring their head coach. All right, excuse me, and him stuttering and stammering and being nervous, and Sirianni being clowned for, like, this is the guy that they hired. Oh my God, this guy is an idiot. And I was like, you guys relax. He was nervous. He had never done it before, and you could tell he was nervous. That doesn't, speak to his football acumen or his ability to lead men. He just was nervous, and so people wanted to make fun of him and really take that soundbite and run with it. I wasn't all that moved by Nick Sirianni struggling through his first press conference. It's kind of how I feel about Treylon Burks' first day at the office. I'm not tripping. It's not a good look. I can admit that. It's not a good look, but I'm not tripping, right? The kid came there, maybe wasn't in the best shape. Maybe it was a little bit hotter than he thought it was going to be. Whatever the case may be, it becomes an issue if we get to training camp, not the next mini camp when the veterans show up and he still might be, having some issues. It becomes an issue for me when we get to training camp because he'll have a lot more time then to get his shit together. If he gets to training camp and he's still having issues, now we got a problem. But he'll be just fine. Look, this dude is super raw. If they think he's going to come in and be A.J. Brown year one, they're sadly mistaken. That said, he can do a lot of things for them. If they utilize him correctly, they'll get some good value out of him initially while he learns the receiver position. But he's not a route runner. He's extremely raw. He's not polished. He's a 50-50 ball go-getter. He turns the 50-50 into a 70-30. And you can use them like Deebo Samuel. You can hand it to him out of the backfield. You can throw a wide receiver screen to him, jet sweeps, things of that nature. Just get it in his hands. That's what they did at Arkansas. I love this pick in the second round. Roger McQuarrie is one of my favorite corners in this entire draft class. He is the most competitive corner in this entire draft class. I think it's hands down, bar none. I love his competitive spirit. Again, he's not the best athlete, not the tallest guy, not the longest defender, pause, but he makes up for that with heart and sheer determination and grit. And I take a Roger McQuarrie on my team 10 times out of 10. So love this pickup for the Tennessee Titans. Nicholas Petit-Ferrer out of Ohio State, solid pickup here in the third round at the tackle position. Everyone will talk about the second third round pick the Titans had of Malik Willis, quarterback out of Liberty. I thought that this could have been something that they could have done earlier. I remember I mocked them getting a quarterback in the first round. Turns out they didn't need to do that. So, and if I'm not mistaken, Willis was the third quarterback taken in this draft class, I think. Let's find out. So they still pretty much had the pick of the litter of the quarterbacks that they wanted to take. I think, yeah, Ritter went second, and that's when I thought Tennessee was like, all right, let's get ours. And truth be told, I think they would have preferred Desmond Ritter. I truly believe that, but I can't confirm nor deny that. I told you the Luke Fickell angle and how Luke Fickell is the head coach of Cincinnati, best friends with head coach Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans. Vrabel was Fickell's best man at his wedding. Don't think they're not talking about Desmond Ritter, and Fickell's not talking him up saying, look, Mike, you're going to love this kid. I'm telling you, he's got all the intangibles. He's unfazed. He's unflappable. You take him on the road, he can win you a tough playoff game. I'm telling you, this kid is mature. He's ready to go. You should take him. I think that conversation was had, but he was gone. Atlanta said, we'll step in. We'll take him first. And so I think they settled in on Malik Willis. I could be wrong, and Malik Willis could have been the target for them the entire time. That said, I'm not the biggest Malik Willis fan, so I don't really know what this is going to turn into. But look, you got to do something. That Tannehill game in the playoffs last year was a train wreck, an abject disaster. So you had to do something. This is their something. We'll see if it works out for them or not. Heard he had a rough go of it in minicamp. It's minicamp. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up. Hassan Haskins, running back out of Michigan. He's a big guy. I like my big upright runners. He's a big 6'1", 6'2" type of running back. Not a super athlete, not super fast, but he's solid. And remember, they had an issue at running back last year when Derrick Henry went down. So a guy like Hassan Haskins, even though the guys stepped up like Deonta Foreman in his absence, it doesn't hurt to have a Hassan Haskins, on the roster. So, You had Chiggy Okonkwo, tight end out of Maryland, who was a guy that a lot of people were enamored by after his combine performance. Super athlete, super raw. He's similar to Treylon Burks. It's another guy that you just get it to. He's not really a route runner. They didn't really do a lot of things that lend itself to him being polished at the tight end position. They just said, hey, you're an athlete. We're just going to get it to you. And they did. Excuse me. And he had some success. But they needed to replace. I look at him as the replacement for Jonnu Smith. They really missed Jonnu Smith last year. He's their Jonnu Smith replacement. That's what I see him as. I love this pick in the 5th round of Kyle Phillips, wide receiver out of UCLA. Reminds me a lot of the Clemson wide receiver that plays for the Raiders, Hunter Renfrow. So I had linked them to Cole Beasley because I felt like they needed a real slot receiver in Tennessee. Well, they got one now in Kyle Phillips. So like that pick. This was a solid draft by the Titans, man. It really was. And like I said, them being 4th is less of an indictment about their draft and more of an acknowledgement that this entire division actually had a quality draft as a whole. So Titans come in at 4th in this draft class and 11th overall in the conference. We get to the number 3 team in this division, and it's the Indianapolis Colts. Didn't have a first-round pick due to the Carson Wentz trade. They traded back in the 2nd round. They had a Carson Wentz trade of their own that netted them a 3rd-round pick and moved up 4 spots in the 2nd round, or 5 spots, excuse me, in the 2nd round to 42. They traded back to 53, picked up more picks, and took Alex Pierce, wide receiver out of Cincinnati. Really good wide receiver. Like him a lot. Don't think he's a number 1. They don't already have a number 1. So I didn't like that they didn't have, I want to take a look and see who was available before I criticize the pick. I want to see what was there for them to take at 42. So they took Pierce at 53. If they stay at 42, John Mechie would have been there. George Pickens would have been there. And they may not have loved those guys. And I get it. When your team that's dealt with injuries with other players, you're less apprehensive to go and take another guy that's got injury concerns, which is why they probably weren't sold on George Pickens. I get that. With what they've dealt with the Ohio State wide receiver, Paris Campbell, you're like, okay, enough of this shit. I've dealt with it with T.Y. Hilton. I'm dealing with it with Paris Campbell. I can't keep getting guys that can't stay healthy. Availability is the best ability. So they took Alec Pierce. Really good receiver. I like him. I don't love him. And I still think they don't have a number 1 receiver. Jelani Woods. Love this pick. You have that's a team that has been heavily reliant upon their tight ends. Jack Doyle just retired. So all you really had left, they had a kid that they drafted, Kyler Granson out of SMU last year. I think they like him, but they still had Cox, Alimo Cox. Now they have Jelani Woods. I think that's a really solid group of tight ends, if you ask me. So I like this pick a lot. Bernard Ryman is a guy. I like him here in the 3rd round. There were some people that wanted this guy to be a 1st-round pick. I didn't love him in the 1st round. Hell, I didn't even love him in the 2nd round. I love him here in the 3rd round. Okay. Is he good enough to start at left tackle for them week 1 and take Eric Fisher's place? You've got some Colts fans that say he can't be any worse than Eric Fisher. Bullshit. Okay. We'll see. He's got an interesting skill set and an interesting backstory. Still relatively new to football, but you like a lot of the things you see. He got a lot of workable traits. We'll see what they do with him. Nick Cross, safety out of Maryland, another guy that I really liked in this draft. Similar to the safety out of Cincinnati that went earlier in the draft. Nick Cross is another one of these dudes, super talented, can run, can hit. And I think I might have had my guys mixed up when I said that the other safety was a 4-3 guy. I think he was a 4-5-2. Cook out of Cincinnati. I think he's like a 4-5-2 guy. I think Nick Cross is the 4-3 safety with some ball skills and will come up and hit you. I think that's an excellent pick there. My biggest issue with the Colts was that I thought they needed to address offensive tackle sooner. And I thought they needed to try to find a number one wide receiver. And maybe they did in Alec Pierce. Maybe they did. But I thought they needed to address those two positions in particular. And I didn't have a problem with them not attacking corner. That was a need up until they got Stephon Gilmore. Once they got Gilmore, I was like, okay, I can back off the cornerback position a little bit with them. But we'll see what Bernard Ryman turns out to be really good. Then this draft is elevated in my eyes. So it's a solid draft. They know how to draft in Indy, and they did it again here. They're number 2 in this division, or excuse me, number 3 in this division, number 9 overall in the conference. You get to the number 2 team in this division, and it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I talk about them every year, along with Cincinnati and Baltimore and Dallas, as teams that just know how to draft. They get talented football players. Again, it doesn't always manifest itself into wins. And sometimes coaching is a part of that. Sometimes you're getting an athlete, but you're not necessarily getting a high IQ football player or a guy that is motivated. But talent and actual production are two different things. And the Jaguars always get talented football players. The talent doesn't always meet the production, but or the production doesn't always meet the talent, I should say, but they always get talented football players. And they did it again here in 2022. Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall pick. We saw that one coming a mile away. Their GM, Trent Baalke, loves to go with the guy with the upside like he did eons ago when he took among a class of a bunch of edge rushers. He took Aldon Smith when nobody had Aldon Smith that high on the radar, and we saw how that turned out for them. So Trayvon Walker is the pick, 1st overall, doubles back in the 1st round to take Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. He looks like today's NFL linebacker. He looks like Darius Leonard is what he looks like. So they moved on from a couple of their linebackers. They traded Joe Schobert last offseason, and then they moved on from Miles Jack. Coincidentally enough, both of those guys ended up in Pittsburgh. I don't think Schobert is there any longer. However, they needed to replace and replenish that position. They just did that with Devin Lloyd, but they weren't done. I just told you they kind of had a mass exodus at linebacker. We'll come back to that, put a pin in the linebacker position. Then they take Luke Fortner out of Kentucky, the center. So you have Trevor Lawrence. You need to protect your investment. So they get Luke Fortner. And remember who their head coach is. It's Doug Peterson. He came from Philadelphia, where he coached a Hall of Fame, future Hall of Famer at the center position in Jason Kelsey. So it's important to have the right guy at the pivot. And so Luke Fortner was the pick. Then they double back in the 3rd round and get Chad Muma. So they double up in the 3rd round and get a guy that a lot of people loved as a 2nd round pick. They get him in the 3rd round out of Wyoming. I love this pick. I love the value of this pick. I love how he'll fit in that defense along with Devin Lloyd, Trayvon Walker. They really reshaped and remodeled that front 7 around Josh Allen's skill set. And now he's got some running mates in that front 7. They're young, they're dumb, they're hungry. That's going to be a dangerous Jacksonville Jaguars team if those guys can put it together sooner rather than later. And then I thought this was icing on the cake for me. Snoop Connor at the running back position. I love me some Snoop Connor, man. He's one of the hardest runners in this year's draft class. Just a physical dude. And if you give him enough space, he'll take off on you and run. So I thought that was a really solid pick to add to the running back mix that they have in Jacksonville. Remember, they're getting Travis Etienne back this year. That's almost like another first round pick because he didn't play a single snap for you last year. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about this draft. And that's why I have the Jacksonville Jaguars as my number 2 draft class in the AFC South Division and the 7th overall draft in the AFC. overall. And then finally, my number one team in the division draft-wise is the Houston Texans. So there's some people that don't necessarily love this draft. I vehemently disagree. I love their first 6 picks of this draft. I'm not love the first 6 picks of this draft. Derek Stingley Jr., I told you he was the most talented player in the entire draft class. He was my number one on my overall big board. So it was not a surprise to me that he went number 3 overall. A lot of people thought that, the injuries and this, that, and the third was going to push him down the draft board. I said, bullshit. If you watch the tape, and I get it, it's some spotty tape in 2020 and 2021. And you have to sort through that. You have to parse through that. You have to get to know the player. And if they've done their homework and they're comfortable, I didn't know that stuff. You talk to him, and if you find out he loves football and this is what he wants, there wasn't a guy more ready to come in the league and do work than Derek Stingley Jr. So wasn't shocked that he went number 3 overall. I was shocked that the Texans had the balls to pull the trigger because everybody was telling them they needed to take Sauce Gardner. So I love the fact that they said, nah, we good. Got enough sauce. I'm going to take Stingley instead. Kenyon Green, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. He comes in and right away gives them some much needed help on that offensive line. The Texans haven't been a great offensive line for a while now. And so they could use an upgrade on that offensive line. And they get Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M to come in, help fortify that offensive line. And so I like that pick. I love the pick of Jalen Petrie out of Baylor, the defensive back. He's a safety. He can do a lot of things, man. He's physical. He plays around the line of scrimmage. He reminds me so much of the Texas Longhorn safety that came into the league with the New Orleans Saints and then ended up with Tennessee and was really good for the Titans. Kind of figured it out, started to really figure it out the back end of his Saints career, and then really was good for the Titans. I'm busting my brain right now trying to think of this dude's name. So I'm going to look him up, because if I don't, I'm going to be trying to think of his name while I'm talking to you, and I'm going to be distracted. So let's see. Saints safety that went to the Titans. Kenny Vaccaro. I didn't even have to go all the way. Kenny Vaccaro. That's his name. It always happens. I start typing some shit, and boom, it comes to me. Kenny Vaccaro. He reminds me so much of Kenny Vaccaro. Fast, physical, will hit anything that moves. Not the biggest guy in the world. Can run and cover. Really good in space. Man, I love me some Jalen Petrie. I think this is a great acquisition. And remember, they just lost Eric Reed. He's not the same safety as Eric Reed. He's not a true free safety, but he does a lot of good things, does Jalen Petrie. That is for certain. John Mechie III. Love this pick out of Alabama. He got injured late in the season. Don't know when he's going to be back and available. Kind of in the same boat as Alabama wide receiver, the other Alabama wide receiver, Jameson Williams. But he got hurt before Jameson Williams. So, and again, they're not the same guys. So you can't, and they don't have the same exact injury. So you can't say, well, Jameson Williams looks like he's going to be back relatively soon. So Mechie must be. I don't know his situation. I don't know where he is in his rehab process. But when he gets healthy, he'll be an excellent complement. And I think he couldn't learn from a better receiver than Brandon Cooks. And his game is kind of similar to Brandon Cooks. I love this pick. Just think, for a team that knows they're not winning anything of substance right now, you're not in any rush. This is a great pick. Even if he can't help you until later on in the season or not this season at all, this is a great pick, period, because he's a hell of a football player. Stuck with the Alabama Crimson Tide and went Christian Harris. I was shocked that he was available in the 3rd round. I thought that was tremendous value in the 3rd round. He's a guy that I really liked in coverage as a linebacker. Like his athleticism. Think he's a guy that could be a little bit more aggressive coming downhill, but I thought Christian Harris was the best of those Alabama linebackers. The best one isn't even in the NFL yet. Toa. There's a guy, Toa. That guy looks like a 1st-round stud. But Christian Harris, I thought would be gone in the second round. And I was shocked to see him still here in the first round. So third round, excuse me. So thought that was really good value for the Texans. And then I really like Dameon Pierce, man. I don't know if anybody in college football ran harder than Dameon Pierce. Okay. So this guy's fun to watch because he just doesn't give a damn. You know, the guys that don't care about their well-being, so if they don't care about themselves, they damn sure don't care about you. Those are the guys that are dangerous because they're going to try to run you over at all costs. That's Dameon Pierce, man. 2 yards in a cloud of dust, and he usually comes out of the other side of that dust up with an extra yard or two just off of sheer physicality. So I like that pick as well. So their first 6 picks I thought were outstanding. Absolutely slam dunks. And I think they did some really good work in this draft, did the Houston Texans. So they ended up with the number 1 overall draft in the AFC South for me and the number 5th overall draft class in the AFC overall. So that is the AFC in a nutshell. To recap, I'll just give you the rankings overall in the conference. The Dolphins were 16th. They were dead last. The Vegas Raiders were 15th. Neither one of these teams had a first-round pick. Neither of these teams had a second-round pick. 14th overall was the Cleveland Browns. Again, another team without a first or a second-round pick. 13th overall was the Cincinnati Bengals. 12th overall, the Los Angeles Chargers. 11th overall, the Tennessee Titans. 10th overall, the New England Patriots. 9th overall, the Indianapolis Colts. 8th overall, the Denver Broncos. 7th overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars. 6th overall, the Pittsburgh Steelers. 5th overall, the Houston Texans. 4th overall, the Buffalo Bills. 3rd overall, the Kansas City Chiefs. 2nd overall, the Baltimore Ravens. And my number 1 draft in the AFC belongs to the New York Jets. So let's get to the comment section. Now we will transition to social media maneuvers. I am a midday marauder. So let's get to your comments. See what you guys have to say. You know what to do. If you're out there, you want your comment read, use a super chat to jump to the front of the line. If you use the hashtag LouieTLive and I have time permitting, we will get to your comment. But that said, let's get to some of the comments. We start with a super chat from my guy, John Livingston, JL Smooth, 105.3 JL Smooth. Really appreciate you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, John Livingston writes, what up, Lou? Last night's stream was awesome. Good work. I got to disagree with you, though, about Deontay Johnson. The guy's gotten better every year with over 100 catches and nearly 1,200 yards last season. Those are number 1 wide receiver numbers. The inconsistency of Deontay Johnson is what scares me. The fact that just 2 years ago, he had the most drops in the NFL, and he still was dropping the football last season. Just he caught more of them. That's it. Also, in that Steelers offense, I don't pay attention to the 100 balls that he caught because they used the pass game as an extension of the run game, even with Najee Harris. A lot of short passes, a lot of Deontay Johnson having to do something after the catch. I want to see if they're going to run the same type of offense now that Ben Roethlisberger is no longer there. I think they're going to switch it up. It's going to look vastly different. And I want to see if his contribution is as great now that they've added George Pickens and the offense is going to look a little bit different. Let's see if he can put up those types of numbers. And can he catch the football? I can't deal with a number 1 receiver that I don't know if on 3rd and 7, if I throw him a perfect ball, if he's going to catch it or not. Those kind of guys scare the shit out of me. I can't have you be my number 1 if I'm questioning whether you're going to catch the football when it's put right between the 1 and the 8. So we can agree to disagree. And I said this last night, he's got number 1 wide receiver talent. And I thought after his first year in the league, I was like, this guy's going to be a number one. He's going to be the new Antonio Brown. They did it. They figured it out. They replaced Antonio Brown with another Mac Antonio Brown. And then he started dropping the damn football all over the place. And I got nervous and cold feet, and I backed off. Had a bounce back year last year, but he still was dropping the damn football. So I got to see it again to believe it. Thank you for the super chat, John Livingston. Those are number one wide receiver numbers, as you mentioned. But I got to see it again. Chill Dude. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chill Dude, writes, Ravens had a good draft. They are always doing a good job in drafting players. They know their identity and smoothly get layers to fit their philosophy. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it any better. They philosophically have beliefs as to what players should look like and be able to do in their scheme, and they go out and get these guys seamlessly. So that's the benefit of knowing who you are, knowing your identity, knowing what kind of football you want to play and what kind of players fit what you want to do. When you don't have a clue, when you're kind of trying to figure that out, it's hard to really identify. The Steelers, and the Ravens for that matter, don't have a problem identifying those types of players, especially the Ravens. And that's why they do so well in the draft. White Run Guard, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. White Run Guard writes, did you touch on the D'Angelo Hall interview yet? Yeah, we did yesterday on the stream, the Commanders King stream. So you'll be able to see that. I'm not going to apologize. I haven't done anything wrong. You know, it just sucks that it's not available for you to watch, because we talked about the D'Angelo Hall situation multiple times on that stream. So, and it'll be available to you here shortly. I don't know how long YouTube is going to take to get their act together and figure this thing out. Like I said, I think it's going to be 24 to 48 hours before this thing is able to become public, and you guys will be able to watch it at your leisure. But we talked about it a ton last night. So it'll be available for you to watch and kind of formulate your own opinion. You probably already have your own opinion. You can hear ours on the subject matter when that video becomes public. Brandon Brantley, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Brandon Brantley, writes, what QB had more of an impact on NFL history, Randall Cunningham or Michael Vick? Randall Cunningham, because he was the first of that breed. So we had seen mobile quarterbacks before. Fran Tarkenton, was a super athletically gifted quarterback, but he was smaller, like Russell Wilson, hard to catch. Randall Cunningham was the first quarterback we saw with size, with that type of athleticism and the dual threat ability to throw the football. Normally, the guys that had that kind of athleticism were smaller guys. Randall was the first guy that was 6'4", but a tremendous athlete and a cannon for an arm, all at the same time coming out of UNLV. So there was nothing like him at the time, which is why he was a phenomenon at the end of the 80s into the early 90s. So to me, his impact on the game, because he showed the league that guys like him, they're unicorns, but if you can find one, they can transform your offense. And so what Vic did was he took what Randall Cunningham and some of the mobile quarterbacks before him did, and he took it to another level. But Cunningham was the first. So of that stature, that size, that arm talent. So I think Cunningham's contribution was greater than that of Michael Vick. Vick just took the baton and ran faster with it, if you will. So I think Vick was more of a phenomenon in terms of the Michael Vick experience, how fast he was. He paved the way for Lamar Jackson and some of these guys that have come up here that you look at and you say, man, this dude is ridiculously talented. He paved the way for some of those guys. But Randall Cunningham, I don't think those guys exist without Randall Cunningham. Let's see. Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Big Money Sonny, writes, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, sup, Lou? Happy Friday. What's up with you? Big Money Sonny says, what do you have planned for the weekend? Salutes on the live stream last night. Looking forward to more dope content coming. I'm just kicking it this week. We've been on the move probably the last 5 out of 6 weekends. We've been doing something. Not at home, not able to just relax, decompress. Last week we stayed home. We're staying home again this weekend, and then we'll be hitting the road again next weekend and the week after that and the week after that. So just a little bit of a reprieve from the hustle and bustle of being active during the weekends. Just going to sit down, relax, enjoy the family, and not do much of anything, and enjoy doing that. That's the plan for the weekend. Hopefully your weekend is enjoyable, whether it's just chilling like me or you're out and about, kicking it around town. Enjoy yourself. Stay safe. That's the most important part. Stay safe. My guy, Big Money Sonny. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Big Money Sonny, who writes, salutes to the mob, new members, and Cherry. Hit the like. Y'all heard the man. Hit the like button. JC Jackson, John Livingston. Thank you for that. That's the name of the corner from New England that I couldn't think of. That's no longer there. Y'all heard the man. Hit the like button if you haven't already done so. Most of you have, and I truly do appreciate that. John Livingston, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. As I mentioned, double up. Thank you for doubling up. JL Smooth, who writes, Lou, you watch any one of our 6-round picks? I watched neither one of them. Christian Benford out of Villanova. I'm a fan of Villanova basketball, but I don't think I've ever watched a game of Villanova football. I asked because word around town is he's flying at minicamp. I wouldn't doubt it. So Villanova basketball is one of the preeminent programs in the sport of college basketball, whereas Villanova football isn't even D1 football. So, yeah, there's a stark contrast between the two. The basketball program pretty much keeps the lights on for all the other programs at the school. But that said, I wouldn't be shocked if he's super talented and you get the most out of him because you guys just know how to draft. So I wouldn't be shocked if he turns out to be a really quality football player for you that you got in the 6th round. But I have no clue. I wouldn't be able to tell you. I haven't watched any of them. So I wouldn't be able to give you any more facts on whether he is a really good player or not. But again, that's a position that needed to have more depth added to it. So we'll see. 6-round picks, not a lot of investment involved there. Doesn't have to make your football team for you to continue to work with him as a practice squad player. So we'll see if he makes your team or if you decide to continue to work with him on your practice squad. Lance Eubank, stand up. You are officially the newest member of the MOBB. Truly do appreciate you. Mob, you know what to do. Welcome Lance to the family with open arms. Embrace him. Show him love. Lance, we appreciate you, and we welcome you to the squad. Glad to have you on board. Really do truly appreciate your patronage. So I think that's the last super chat. No, we got one here from Lance, the newest member of the MOBB, Lance Eubank. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. And again, thank you for becoming the newest member of the MOBB, who writes, you care what D'Angelo Hall says, remember 4th and 21. So we talked about it last night on the show. And you'll have a chance to watch if you didn't watch last night. And again, last night was a marathon. It was about 5 hours long. So there's a lot to comb through and parse through to get to the D'Angelo Hall comments. But we talked at great lengths about it. So I don't really want to spoil that. And we talked about it multiple times because it was brought up multiple times on the stream last night. So not only will you get my opinion on the situation, but you'll also get Ed Oliver's and Rico's opinion as well. So we had a lot to say, and I think that you'll find the opinions that we had to be interesting. So, yeah. Let's see. I got a couple minutes. I don't have much time, but I got a couple minutes to read a couple of hashtags. Loser the Redskins fan writes, "Who are your top 5 QBs in the AFC?" It's ridiculous. So I in no particular order, I'm just going to run off some names and then maybe I'll be able to put them in some kind of sequential order. You got Mahomes, you got Russell Wilson, you got Justin Herbert, you've got Josh Allen, you've got Deshaun Watson, you've got Lamar Jackson, you've got Joe Burrow. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks vying for 5 spots. I can tell you right now, Mahomes is in that top 5. Allen is in that top 5. I got to see Watson in action, but if I'm getting Watson from Houston, Watson's in the top 5. Burrow and Herbert probably round out that group. I got to see Russell Wilson in Denver, and I think he's going to have a big year, and I'm not counting him out. I'm not one of those people that think he's washed. I just think it's the young boys' time. So Lamar is on the outside looking in, and so is Russell. If I had to put them in order, you still got to knock off the king. And the king right now is Mahomes. Still, even though Burrow and company did that, the nod goes to Mahomes. Number 1. Boy. Allen's 2 for me right now. 3 would be, I think I got to go with Burrow, but I think I want to put Jay Herbo as 3. I really, truly do, because I think he has a chance to be better than Joe Burrow. And I never thought I would say that, but I'm going with Burrow 3, Herbert 4, Jay Herbo 4, and Deshaun Watson 5. That's my top 5. So I would have Lamar Jackson 6th, and I would have Russell Wilson 7th. That would be my number 7 right now. Let's see. Let's go to the next hashtag. Sindeko. Thank you for the comment, who writes, with a completely rebuilt O-line, a healthy C-Mac, and serviceable backup, college coaches and coordinators replaced with experienced NFL coaches, and the GM taking more control, we back. Well, you sound reinvigorated. We'll see. And I love Matt Corral. I think you got the best quarterback out of the draft class. That said, or at least the one that I feel like has the highest upside, but also has an extremely low floor, just like all these quarterbacks. But you still look like you're going to start Sam Darnold. So I don't know how excited you can really be. Sindeko says, let me rephrase that. That sounds much better. I'm cautiously optimistic. We have a pretty tough schedule, and Matt Rule is still suspect. Absolutely, completely 100% agree. Let's see. Junior 13 writes, I got something. Do you think the Washington football team memorabilia will be a collectible or a time and items we will want to forget? LOL, like in 50 years when the Commanders are an established franchise. I do think it will be a collectible item. I'm holding on to all my stuff. It'll be a throwback. Like Washington, the Commanders won't have throwbacks to the Redskins. The league won't allow it, but they'll have throwbacks to the Washington football team. So I think that's something that they probably will consider a throwback item as, the Commanders become more established. Let's see. Got a hashtag here from Derek B, who writes, still mad over missing last night's show. You had me wrong. I was just saying. So yeah. I read your tweet you sent me. He said Wentz lost his shit over being split out with every game with Hurts read option, just not done to young quarterbacks. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think he felt like Hurts was a threat. I think that the combination of him being a second round pick, knowing what happened with Nicholas Foles, and then having this guy take away snaps, it felt like Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick, where they gave Kaepernick a package, but you knew eventually that package would turn into him starting. Like it was only a matter of time. And it never should have been that way, nor should it have felt that way. But again, he had PTSD from Nicholas Foles in that whole situation. So he was already on high alert and very defensive. So yeah, I might have misconstrued your stance, but I don't think that was the end all be all. I think the drafting of him in general was the first thing that really kind of shook his rattled his cage a bit. And then I think thereafter, the subsequent snaps that he was getting really started to eat away at whatever was left. So yeah. All right. Derek B also writes, Hamilton was never going top 10. The NFL does not consider safety a top 10 pick position. The cap number doesn't fit just the way it is. I mean, Jamal Adams went top 10. If you're talented enough, you'll go top 10 irregardless of position. The league has proven that as well. Running back isn't a position you should take in the top 10, but if the guy is talented enough and warrants that type of consideration, you'll take him. They would have taken him top 10 had he performed. Had he run a 4.39, had he run a 4.43, Kyle Hamilton would have been a top 10 pick. I'm not buying what you're selling. Okay. Had he run a 4.43, some team would have been enamored and said, this guy's a game changer and we can play him everywhere. If you can't play single high free safety, you can't be a top 10 pick. And running a 4.56 doesn't necessarily make people feel warm and fuzzy about the prospects of you playing single high free safety. So there's that. I'll take one more comment and then we'll get out of here. Let's see. Condo P writes, what's the latest on YouTube making last night's stream, a live stream with Ed and Rico private? So I at the top of the show, for those of you who just got here, and we'll skip over garbage time today. And I'll check right now while I'm live with you guys. I don't think anything's changed. I think we're still kind of in limbo with it, but I will check and see if anything's come to fruition. So yeah, they are having some kind of glitch, is YouTube, with some of their streams being locked as private, and they're telling you that you violated one of their terms and policies with spamming and deception, and like you're misleading people in your title and your tags and your thumbnail. I did none of that, and I know that I didn't do any of that. And then to confirm, other people, and I've seen videos of people posting the exact same message that I got, and it's their same normal content that they've never been flagged for before. So it's a platform wide issue that they're having right now with specific videos, and it's not everybody's channel, it's not every single video, but just certain videos are getting hung up and they're making them private and they're locked. I think they've got some kind of bug. They may have even been hacked, for all I know. At the end of the day, that video right now is just kind of in a holding queue as private. It's locked. I can't do anything with it. I'm staring at it right now, and they won't allow me to appeal. That's something that if they legitimately had a gripe with you, you could, make any necessary changes if you saw fit, and then appeal their decision to make your video private. I can't even appeal. Nobody that had this happen to them can even appeal the video being made private by YouTube and having it being locked. So that goes to show you that they're having some issues on their end. I spoke to a representative via online chat, and like I said at the top of the show, he was helpful, but he wasn't helpful. He was helpful enough that I wasn't pissed off when I was done talking to him, but he wasn't helpful enough to make me feel confident that something's going to get done today. I think at the earliest 24 hours from now, that video may be available for public consumption. But the reality of the situation is it could be more like 48 hours. I don't know. I've never seen this happen before on YouTube. Anytime you get on the intraweb, anything is possible. So I have no idea what's going to happen. All I know is I'm pissed off because that's 5 hours of content that people were, looking forward to watching the day after and maybe over the weekend, maybe even in installments. It's 5 hours. So not everyone has 5 hours to just sit and consume something in one setting. So you might have said, hey, I'll get an hour and a half of this on Friday. I'll get another hour and a half on, Saturday, and I'll finish it up on Sunday and be done with it. Now that whole plan has been altered and changed. And so I wish I had more answers for you, but I don't at this point. So they gave me an email. They sent me an email, and he said absolutely nothing in the email either. So anyway, Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Big Money Sonny. If you haven't already, just making sure. My guy, Big Money Sonny, writes, Lou, if you could meet with any Washington player, dead or alive, who would it be and why? For me, it'd be Sean Taylor. So told you he was one of my favorite players. And I'd love to just get in his, because he was different, not just off the field, but on it too. He would run to work. His dad trained him differently. And so I'd love to talk about him, to talk to him. Anyway, Likely Phenomenon, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy LP writes, what's good, broski? What's good with you, LP? Says, appreciate you and everything you do. Man, thank you so much, LP. Greatly appreciate you and your support over the years as well. So, I'm looking at this video right now, and it's limited on the monetization. So I could finish this thing, and this shit could go private for all I know, because I don't know why this one is showing is limited. So I don't know, man. YouTube, I never know what the hell's going on with YouTube. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I always check my live streams after I'm done, because you just never know. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I hope all of you enjoy your weekend. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Monday. Next week, we'll come back and do the NFC side of the bracket in terms of the draft. Until then, enjoy your weekend. You know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. Take care of yourselves. Have some fun, but most importantly, be safe. And we will reconvene on Monday. Hopefully, I'll have that video out to you over the weekend if YouTube can get their act together. I won't hold my breath, however. Until then, you guys have a good one. God bless and good night. LouieTeeNetwork.